Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're deconstructing a truly fascinating text that lays out the hidden blueprints of how the global 0.1% manufacture their legacies. We're talking about peeling back the curtain on shadow PR. This source breaks down exactly how the world's most dangerous individuals literally buy their way into the history books, using a very specific and highly secretive kind of ghostwriter.
Right out of the gate, we're hitting the core moral dilemma of our source material, and it's a question that's going to hang over this entire descent into the PR underworld. Imagine this. If you were offered a massive six-figure retainer or, even up to $10 million to take someone responsible for actual crimes against humanity and rebrand them into a visionary philosopher on the global stage, would you do it? It's the ultimate test of cash versus conscience.
And this quote brilliantly captures the exact tone of the text. When you take this gig, you aren't just operating as some standard speechwriter or a harmless PR rep. No, the text frames the ghostwriter as a chemist of garbage. Your entire job is basically an alchemy of deception. You're taking the murky, toxic pond water of a tyrant's actual deeds, and you are transforming it into a golden elixir that the global public is just eager to drink up.
Section 1. The Ghostwriter's Dark Role. Let's see how this goes from a lucrative job offer to a deeply shadowy career. The author actually compares this dark PR work to international arms dealing. Think about how an arms dealer uses end-user certificates to make a massive shipment of, say, 5,000 AK-47s look, on paper at least, like a perfectly legal, routine transfer for a local police force. Well, that is exactly what the ghostwriter does with information. The real game here isn't about truth at all. It's entirely about making the paperwork, the narrative, look legitimate. You're putting a completely legit stamp on a story that is riddled with very dark holes.
So, the real point here is that you're hired to build a highly effective distraction. You aren't just writing press releases, you're engineering emotional clickbait, and the source uses this incredibly vivid, visceral imagery to explain why. This clickbait is designed to mask the wet, violent coughing of a dying, corrupt system. You're out there generating noise that sounds visionary and modern, completely hiding the grim reality of violence and exploitation happening just offstage. Section 2. Manufacturing a legitimate narrative. Now, we really have to ask, who exactly is paying these massive retainers?
The source text paints a stark and honestly fascinating picture here. These clients, they are not the cartoonish, mustache-twirling villains you see in movies. They are impartially described as incredibly sophisticated. You might be dealing with charismatic men who can casually quote classical philosophy over dinner, while simultaneously serving as commanders of child soldiers. They might be oil royalty, sitting on trillions, controlling massive swaths of the Earth's resources, or even a supreme boss at the very top of a global shadow empire. They have immense wealth and polish, but make no mistake, they rule through raw, brutal power.
Now, what's really interesting here is the ultimate goal. Why do people with virtually infinite power even need a ghostwriter? Well, because they've realized that raw industrial power and fear, they're nothing without institutional influence. They want to trade a fading legacy of excess, the yachts, the parties, all that temporary wealth that vanishes when they die, for permanent Rockefeller-style permanence. They want their names echoing through grand foundations and historical records, completely scrubbed clean of how that wealth was actually acquired.
Which brings us to Section 3, the art of the pivot. To achieve that kind of permanent institutional influence, the source material outlines a very precise playbook for the ghostwriter. Step 1, you pivot the tyrant's image straight toward philanthropy. You have them fund a massive library or a shiny new wing at an elite university, ensuring the name lives on through education instead of violence. Step 2 is playing what they call the marriage game. This means strategically marrying the tyrant's family into the invisible aristocracy of global banking and real estate. The entire goal is to embed them so deeply into every single power corridor on the map that they just become untouchable. At this stage of the playbook, your role completely evolves. You are no longer just writing words, you've been elevated to a tactical commander of information. You're directing an entire orchestra of misinformation now, managing complex networks of front companies and leading elite crisis PR teams to basically drown out any inconvenient truths that might bubble up. You've become the absolute architect of their new reality. Section 4, Trapped in the Golden Cage. And here is where the source text pulls the rug right out from under the reader. The text provides this really chilling timeline. Year 1 is all about that massive retainer and executing the tactics. Year 2, you're successfully orchestrating the art of the pivot, probably feeling like a master of the universe. But the text specifically notes that about 3 years into this highly lucrative journey, a terrifying realization finally sets in. You suddenly realize you've become an expensive loose end. The author uses a fantastic analogy here, likening the ghostwriter to a black market surgeon. Imagine you're a surgeon brought in to save a ruthless crime lord's life. You succeed, you get paid an unbelievable amount of money. But as you look around that glass-walled room, it hits you. You've seen way too much. You know exactly where the bodies are buried, literally and figuratively. And because of that dangerous knowledge, you are never, ever going to be allowed to just walk away.
Just look at the intense contrast in this lifestyle. On one hand, you have the ultimate markers of wealth. You're living in a sprawling Monaco penthouse. You're wearing a watch that costs more than a house. But all those luxuries are completely eclipsed by a suffocating daily paranoia. You are a multimillionaire who literally has to check under their car for a bomb every single morning before starting the engine.
And that isolation, it bleeds right into your personal life. The text notes how your old friends actually sound different when they speak to you now. They're careful, they're measured, they weigh every single word. They keep their distance because they recognize exactly what you are, a weapon in a very dangerous arsenal. You have officially become the merchant of death for ideas.
You look at this massive empire you've helped sanitize, and you realize that while you didn't choose the violence yourself, you provided the exact tools to make that violence appear perfectly moral and totally efficient. By building this immaculate golden cage for a man who effectively owns the world, you realize you've locked yourself right inside it with him. You've spent your life saving someone else's legacy, only to become just another captive mammal trapped in a kingdom of your own making.
Which brings our explainer right back to where we started. We've looked at the tactics, the staggering wealth, and the devastating psychological reality of being the architect behind a tyrant's mask. So I'll leave you to weigh the ultimate moral cost presented in today's source material, knowing the reality of the golden cage. If you are offered $10 million to rebrand a villain, would you take the cash or keep your soul?